Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar that will provide information about the Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant Program, Phase 4 of this program that offered by the EDA to business owners who are interested in applying for grant funding and who have been negatively impacted by this pandemic. I'd like to first start by introducing Assemblyman Vincent Mazzeo, who represents District 2 in Atlantic County. Assemblyman Mazzeo serves as the chair of the State and Local Government Committee and is a member of the Labor and Tourism, Gaming, and the Arts Committee. Assemblyman Mazzeo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alberto. I certainly appreciate that introduction. First, I'd like to thank the EDA for hosting this webinar today for the fourth phase of the small business loans in response to the pandemic. Throughout the pandemic, I've been proud to work in the Assembly to sponsor and champion legislation to fund these loans that have been a lifeline for so many businesses throughout the state. As a small business person, and quite frankly, essential business, I know that it's our state's responsibility to ensure that not only large employers and the million-dollar companies that make it out on the other side of COVID, but that it's even more prudent to ensure that small Main Street businesses and micro businesses that invested in our communities make it out alive on the other end as well. That's why I've sponsored bills that have been signed into law. A 5704 appropriates $120 million to the EDA to support micro businesses. And A 5444 appropriated $35 million funds for our food and beverage businesses. They are just two of the many bills that have been signed into law providing funds to the EDA. But of course, the laws are not just everything and the money isn't everything. It's getting the word out there, and that's half the battle. That's why it was so important that the EDA offered a pre-registration for these grants and to go through an aggressive public awareness campaign to get the word out as many eligible businesses as possible. I'm glad to be hosting these conversations today. The pre-registration will allow businesses all across the state to have a fair chance of attaining these grants. Too often, small businesses without as many resources may not be aware of these opportunities until it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Mazzeo, and thank you for your continued support. I'd like to introduce now Tim Sullivan, CEO of the Nj Eda, who will provide an overview of the authority's COVID-19 response. Welcome, Tim.
Great, thank you, Alberto. First and foremost, on behalf of Governor Murphy and our entire administration, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this webinar and learn about these programs. I also want to extend my thanks and appreciation to the Assemblyman for not only for doing this webinar with us, but for all of his leadership around everything in COVID-19, but particularly around small business support and his sponsorship of a number of the bills, as you just mentioned, that we're here to talk about the funding that is available under. I was with Governor Murphy just yesterday in Long Branch for him to witness him sign a package of, I believe it was 6 bills, allocating another $235 million of funding to support small businesses through this pandemic, which brings our total well over 600 million, on its way to $1 billion or so of direct economic relief from state funds and federal funds for small businesses through this crisis. Because as much as it feels like normalcy or normal life is returning at a great pace, which is great, and obviously the progress on the public health side is the key element of everything returning to normal. We know that the pain and the hardship in the small business community will extend past the public health crisis. That there are businesses that have had as hard in 18 months as you can imagine, whether it's due to regulations or due to customer behavior or due to just the challenges of navigating this terrible health crisis. The healing and the recovery that needs to happen is in the process of happening in small business. The small business part of our county, particularly our minority and women-owned businesses that were hit hardest by this crisis, goes on. And so the relief work that we've had the privilege of working on the last 15 or 16 months, and it will continue. The governor and the legislature and legislative leadership and Assemblyman Mazzeo and the team have made sure we got all the resources we need to fill all the demand that might exist for these programs. Pre-registration is open right now. That's what we're here to talk about today, because there are funds available right now that you can access and get some badly needed relief. Because particularly, we know there's lots of federal funds, lots of federal programs that are well-meaning. But when the federal government says small business, they mean kind of a bigger size business than what we might mean when we think about a mom and pop establishment, or a restaurant, or a small food service establishment that's maybe got a couple people working at it, or a micro business. Those firms often struggle to access these federal programs, and so that's why Governor Murphy has developed a suite of programs. One of which, and the biggest of which, is the grant program we're here to talk about today. But to really comprehensively attack this challenge and provide a real diversity of different kinds of supports that we're thrilled to be able to bring forward. But you didn't come for a commercial about how important these programs are. You came to learn about how to access them. So with that, I will hand it to my great colleague and partner, Patience Purdy, who has forgotten more about these grant programs than most of us will ever know in her travels and her leadership of so many things around the EDA shop. So with that, Patience, tell us how how folks can access these important funds.
I'd be happy to. Give me just a minute. I'm going to share my screen here. Share. And if someone will confirm that you see the big screen that says Small Business Emergency Phase 4, then I'll move through it. Yeah. I'm going to guess it's there. All right, so as the Assemblyman and Mr. Sullivan said, we're here to discuss the Small Business Emergency Grant Program Phase 4. This is a program that, my clicker works. There we go. Provides funding for small businesses with 50 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. It's broken down into 4 separate types of industry sectors. For this round, we're looking at restaurant and food services, restaurants which are considered food services or drinking places. So a couple things you'll need to know there about the grant program is that your NAICS code, if you are a food service or drinking place, should begin with 722. Restaurants are eligible, as are all businesses, for different levels of award based on the size of the business according to full-time equivalent employees that are filed on WR30 with the Department of Labor. So 5 or fewer, eligibility goes up to $10,000, between 6 and 25 up to $15,000, and from 26 to 50 full-time equivalent employees up to $20,000. You must have a physical location in New Jersey. That can be a home-based business, that's fine. You must be registered to do business in New Jersey. If you don't know if you're fully and properly registered now, we're going to give you some advice on how to get there and find out. In good standing with Department of Labor, with taxation, we're going to ask you to certify to a negative impact of the emergency, and that your intent is not to lay off any workers, right? Not that you could not have or will not have, but that your goal is to retain as many of your staff and employees as you can. The pre-registration process is open through June 30th, and that will close at 5 p.m. on June 30th. So get in there and get your pre-registration in. That's the first step of the process. The second step of the process is the actual application, and that will be on July 7th at 9 a.m. for restaurants, food service, or drinking places. And that will close on July 15th at 5 p.m. We're going to walk individually through each of every page of the pre-registration for you. So hang tight, it's an exciting ride. The next industry that we're going to talk about are childcare providers. Childcare providers all have a NAICS code of 624410. So you'll want to make sure that you know that if you're a childcare provider, because we're going to ask you to enter that into the pre-registration. Again, the physical location, registered to do business, Department of Labor, good standing, all of those are going to apply across the board, whatever type of industry you are. If you are a child care provider and are licensed by the Department of Human Services, then we're going to ask you about that as well. You may be a child care provider that is not required to be licensed. If you have 5 or fewer children under your care, my understanding is that's the cutoff for needing to be licensed or not. But if you are and you need to be, you're going to need to let us know that. Child care providers will also apply on Wednesday, July 7th at 9 a.m. That's when it will open. It will remain open through July 15th at 5 p.m. We encourage everyone to get in there as soon as possible, as grant funding is awarded and processed on a first come, first served basis. The next business industry classification is going to be micro businesses. Those are businesses with 5 or fewer employees. Fewer could be 0. You'd be a sole proprietorship and have no employees, absolutely eligible. You fall under the micro business. So in addition, if you're an employer that pays via 1099, so you may have a number of staff people that work for you, but you pay them through 1099, not through WR30s, you would fall into the micro business category as well. And again, physical location in New Jersey, good standing with labor, registered to do business. What you don't see here is a requirement for a particular NAICS code. We are going to ask you what your NAICS code is, and that's the North American Industry Classification System. That website is NAICS.com, and you can enter keywords in there if you want to do a little pre-work and find out what that is if you don't know it. Micro businesses, again, 5 or fewer, or those that do not file WR30s, you're going to apply on July 8th at 9 a.m. And again, that will stay open through July 15th. And then finally, our other small businesses. So everybody that isn't a micro, that isn't childcare, that isn't restaurant. So everybody else with between 6 and 50 full-time equivalent employees, you will apply on July 7th at 9 a.m. And again, the same basic eligibility requirements are going to be there for you. And we'll walk through those in a little bit more detail as we go through the application. What you're going to want to be prepared for when you come to start the pre-registration. There is a sample pre-registration and a sample application at the business.nj.gov/COVID site. I encourage everyone to look at that. Look at the sample. You're going to see each of the questions and each of the pages that you see here today. There's also a video walkthrough. Highly recommend the video walkthrough. It will walk you through how you log into the system, what that looks like, how you log back into the system should you need to do something else to your pre-registration before you submit it. So we walk you through all of those possibilities in the video, and the video is terrific, and it's at the business.nj.gov site. Have your contact information, your primary business address, and very important, make sure that you have handy any other government assistance that you received, whether it was federal funding like the PPP or the EIDL, county or municipal funding, other funding from the EDA. Make sure you have where you received that funding from, the amount of that funding, and the dates of the funding. If you applied but didn't receive it, we still want to know. And if you applied but were declined for some reason, we're going to want to know that too. Your business's full legal name, your entity type, your year established, and this is important because you needed to have been established and operational as of February 15th, 2020. If you were not established and operational as of February 15th, 2020, then this program, then you're not eligible for this program. You'll want your tax ID number, and this is another, the next item here on the bullet list is another good one to talk about. You're going to want to know when you had your highest full-time equivalent employee count. So I think this applies to many businesses, unfortunately, but on February 15th, 2020, or March 1st, 2020, you may have had 52 employees, 28 employees, and right now you have 10 or 15. We want to fund you with the grant where you were in prior to the pandemic, what your normal was. So we're going to ask you for the quarter that you had the highest WR30 full-time equivalent employee count. And that's where we're going to look at where the level of funding that you get. Now, the program only allows for up to 50 FTEs. We're looking at who you are today for that, not who you were when you were full and robust, but where you are today. So we're looking at, well, third quarter or fourth quarter WR30 information for that. So if you're over 50 full-time equivalent employees in the third or fourth quarter of 2020, that may make you, that's going to make you ineligible because of just the size of your business. But if you were that and are not in the third and fourth quarter, then that's how we're going to judge your eligibility. We mentioned again the NAICS code, and then you're going to want to key in 2020 annual revenue was and what your revenue loss was due to the pandemic. So try and have that information with you when you start your pre-registration. You must be registered to do business in the state of New Jersey as evidenced by a current registration status from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. If you are not recognized by taxation, you'll need to provide us with a valid business registration certificate. So if taxation, when we do our checks with our sister agencies, which is how we do a lot of the background checks on the individual businesses, if it comes back from taxation that you're not recognized, then we're going to ask you, and we're going to provide you a link where you can go and pull your business registration certificate. If you're not able to do that, we're going to give you 4 weeks from when we say we weren't able to do it, you say you weren't able to do it, to get that satisfied and take care of that requirement. And on the business.nj.gov site is a link to a video that we did with our partners over at Taxation and Treasury, the Department of Revenue and Enterprise Services, that will walk you through how to solve for that. So we're trying to give you all the tools that you need to get to an approval. We will not execute a grant agreement without a current registration status, however, from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. Okay. So don't forget, register online. We opened on May 26th. We will close on June 30th at 5 p.m. You can access the application and all of the information at the business.nj.gov/COVID site. And you'll just, if you don't see it immediately, you can type phase 4 into the search and it will come up very quickly. Applications will open on either the 7th or the 8th, depending on your type of business. Restaurants, childcare, and small businesses with between 6 and 50 full-time equivalents will apply on July 7th. And micro businesses, those are businesses with 5 or fewer, or businesses that do not file a WR30, will apply on July 8th at 9 a.m. Okay, here's the sample pre-registration. So we're kind of getting into the thick of it now. When you get to the application center, you're going to need to register. We're going to ask you to create a username and password and to confirm that password. The email that you enter here when you register is the email that we're going to use to communicate with you 99.9% of the way that we will communicate with you about your grant is through this email. So make sure that you're giving us an email that you check frequently, and that you write down your username and password, and don't forget it, because you'll be able to come back into the application center and view the status of your grant throughout the pre-registration and application process. We're going to ask you some basic information from you, and then we're going to ask you to confirm your email address. The way that happens is we're going to send you an email confirmation. We're going to say, you'll click on the blue button that says confirm email. We'll send it to you. Once you get that email, you'll click within it. It'll bring you back to our portal, and now your email is confirmed. It's a process that we put in place because the main way that we communicate with you is email, and we want to make sure that we have the right email on file. And then you'll end up here. And at the top, instead of sign in, once you've signed in, you'll see your name. You'll have a drop down that says My Applications and a drop down that says English. If you click on the English, you can change it to Spanish, and you can come through the whole process in Spanish. The My Applications drop down, you'll click COVID phase 4, and that will take you to this screen where you're going to click on the blue button that says Start My Pre-Registration. Then we'll take you here, ask you for some additional information. Anything on this within the application that has a red asterisk is required information. I think we're all pretty used to that now, but I do want to point that out. And we're going to ask you on this page if you're an authorized signer for the business entity. So you must be an authorized signer. If you are the CPA, accountant, bookkeeper for the business, that's fine as long as you're authorized to sign on behalf of it. We're going to ask you for your legally registered business name and if you have a DBA. If you don't have a DBA, that's fine too. That's not a required field. Next, we're going to look for your business address, the physical location where the business exists. So if you're a home-based business, that's fine. That's the address that you'll put in here. Where I think we need a little explanation, or where I like to provide some guidance, is when we get to the zip code. You'll notice that it's grayed out here on your screen. That means you can't just enter your zip code. You have to use the search function, click on the magnifying glass, and then a pop-up will appear and you'll be able to enter your zip code and then select it from a list. Once you do that, the same thing will happen for the city. You'll click on the search, and based on your zip code, we're going to give you options for what your city is. And I know that I'm here in Mercer County, and there are Mercer County addresses that come up, or zip codes that will come up with potentially Lawrenceville or Princeton or Hopewell or Ewing, some of these townships that kind of overlap. And I think that happens throughout New Jersey. So you'll select the one where you live. Don't be intimidated if it doesn't look like yours is there. Just take a second look. And make sure you select the appropriate one. The state and county will populate on their own. We're going to ask you if this address is a commercial location. It's a yes or no question, just answer. And if it's a home-based business, again, home-based business is perfectly eligible. We're just trying to understand what the universe of applicants look like with a lot of these questions. Next, organization details. The date the business was established and operational. So there's, you can enter it yourself with the slashes, or you can click on the little calendar. Some of you may have to go back several years of clicking to do that. So feel free to, if you started your business in January of 1980, you might want to just enter that on your own. And then, is your business still in operation as of today? So you may have had to close your doors for COVID. But that doesn't mean that your business went away, that you closed your business. So we're asking you if your business is still in operation. And then we're going to ask you the ownership structure of the business. And next, we'll get to the organization details. Your employer identification number. So you'll notice, and it's a little different right now on this second phase of reopening for the program, we're going to ask you for your EIN from the beginning. And that's for us to be sure that we don't have an application for you on file already. So you'll have entered that already once. You'll need to enter that again on this page. We're going to ask you to certify that you're properly and fully registered within the state of New Jersey. And here's where I mentioned there's a link that you can use if you're not sure if you're fully and properly registered. And there are steps listed in there that are easy to follow. And again, on the business.nj.gov/COVID site, if for some reason you're not able to pull that business registration certificate, watch the video that we webinar that we did with the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services. It walks you through that process and is typically something that you can do very, very quickly. We're going to ask you how you file your taxes. Is it a Schedule C or E? Do you file a WR-30 with the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development? And do you use a professional employment organization to file your WR-30? So answer the questions based on your individual business. There's not a wrong answer here. Okay, here we go to some information about your full-time employees. The number of full-time employees as reported on your Q3 or Q4 2020 WR-30 filing. This is how we determine your eligibility. Number of part-time W-2 employees. We ask about your 1099 employees. Again, these are not factored into consideration for your grant eligibility, but they do help us understand who's applying, what the businesses are like in the state, and give us some information to go by as we're working through and creating other programs. Here's where you will enter your 2019 and 2020 revenue. And then the NAICS code. I'm going to give this tidbit of advice to anybody who's not sure what their NAICS code is. I prefer to go to NAICS.com and find my NAICS code. I feel like their search function is a little bit easier than the one that's embedded within our application. So NAICS.com, you can use keyword searches and then just write down your NAICS code. And what you'll do is use the magnifying glass, type in that NAICS code, click search, and it will come up, you'll select it, and it will populate for you. There is a search function here. So if you don't do it ahead of time, that's fine. You can use the search function within the application. I simply think the NAICS.com was easier from my perspective. Next, we're going to ask you about the previous 8 quarters. As I mentioned earlier, when did your business have the highest employment? Was it Q2 of 2020 or Q1 of 2020? We're going to go from 2019, Q1 of 2019 through to Q4 of 2020. So tell us when you were the most robust and you had the most employees. And then did you file an NJWR 30 for that quarter? If you say no to that, as I stated before, you'll be in the micro business category, which is eligible for up to $10,000, because you must file a WR 30 and have WR 30 employees in order for us to do it by your full-time employee equivalent count. And then we're going to ask you in the highest quarter, what were your full-time equivalent employees? Oh, I think I went back. I think I have 2 of the same one. Sorry about that. The next page, we're going to ask you about religious affiliation. This is going to apply, I think, in most respects to some daycare organizations, because some of them fall under, are attached to synagogues or churches, entities that do have religious affiliations. If you do not, you'll say no and you'll move on to the next question. If you say yes, that's fine. We're going to ask you a series of additional questions just to clarify how you're affiliated and how that affects the part of the business that we're looking to provide assistance for. And then the next question is about lobbying, and is your business engaged in lobbying or political purposes? Again, if not, say no. If yes, that's fine. We just have additional questions to ask you because there are parameters around what the grant funding can go to with regards to that. Okay, select any business tax returns you filed with the state. It's a multi-select. If it's none, select none. And then our duplication of benefit affidavit. And I spoke about this earlier, and this is probably what's going to take most of you the most time, depending on if you have received other funding. So we're going to ask you if you've applied for any. And once we do that, we're going to give you a list of the most prominent other funding sources that we're aware of. So this includes PPP phases 1 and 2, the EIDL loan, the EIDL grant, all of our programs, as well as programs through the NJRA, NJHMFA, and some, we also have a note there for county funding, CARES Act funding from your local county. Select that. Once you've selected those, we'll take you to a page, and this is just one part of it. But you'll see, this assumes that I had selected that I received the Small Business Association Paycheck Protection Program Phase 1 funding. We're going to ask you, what was your status? Did you get approved? Are you simply applied? Did you get declined? What was the approved for or applied for amount, the approved for, applied for date, and then the purpose of the fund. So we're going to ask you that for any type of funding you received. And that's a requirement of the grant program and a requirement for federal funding and state funding, sorry. We're going to then ask you about your individual business designations. Are you minority, woman, veteran, or disabled owned? not required to answer that. You can certainly answer that you don't wish to identify. We use this for our own purposes. It helps us understand who is out there and applying to our grants, and it does provide guidance for us for future programs. So we appreciate it if you do, but in no way are you required to tell us that information. Your business details. This is a really important section here. Answer honestly, but note that we've got some red lettering here. Does your entity host gambling or gaming activities? And a note based on some experience that we had throughout the program, selling lottery tickets or similar activities to that are not considered gambling and gaming. So if you're a restaurant, sometimes I've seen the lottery machines there, or a small convenience store, the fact that you're selling lottery tickets does not mean that you're considered gambling or gaming. If you're a nonprofit that maybe hosts a casino night, that's not considered gambling or gaming either. We're going to ask you if you conduct or purvey adult activities, conduct auctions, bankruptcy sales, if you're a transit merchant, an outdoor storage company, a host of questions. Just answer them honestly based on your business. And then a legal questionnaire. So some thoughts around this. At this point, you might be thinking, boy, this is a pre-registration. This is really long. What does the application look like? The reason the pre-registration is so robust and full is because the pre-registration is not first come, first serve. And so we wanted to make sure that you had the time to thoughtfully and carefully fill out the application, where we were asking questions that you might have to look up some information for. That includes the duplication of benefits, and for some includes some of these legal questionnaire answers. If you answer yes to any of the legal questionnaire questions, we're going to give you the opportunity to explain and ask you to explain in more detail what those circumstances were. We want you to have the time to do that without worrying about getting your registration submitted right away. Okay, Privacy Act Statement Release Waiver. As I mentioned earlier, we have partnerships and MOUs with sister agencies in order for us to be able to gather information about your particular business in an automated way. So you're saying to us that that's okay with you. And then your electronic signature, and this is an important page again. You agree to be bound by your electronic signature. You're an authorized signer for the organization. Your email address will appear here. Make sure it's correct, and then your full name. And then just to make sure that you're not a robot, we have a little CAPTCHA down here at the bottom. And that takes you through the pre-registration. You're done. So good news. The next page is what you will see once you hit submit. Hitting submit on that pre-registration is very important, and it does a couple of things. Once you hit submit, all of that information is in our system and ours and cannot be changed. So there's not an opportunity to edit once you submit. There is an opportunity for you to edit prior to hitting submit. You can go backwards through any of those pages. You can also leave your computer, come back, sign in again, and access that application under your My Applications tab when you sign in. And you'll see it there. It will have an MOLA number attached to it. You can click on that and go right back to whichever page you left off on and finish. But once you hit submit, you cannot. It is not editable. What you will get once you hit submit is your confirmation. We're sending you this in an email, but I tell everyone to, print the screen, take a screenshot of it, and save that. Until you get that confirmation email, you've got this then, which tells you your application ID and also outlines for you when you need to come back and apply based on what type of establishment you are. So your pre-registration number will start with MOLA. We're going to list the email here that's blocked out in blue, but that'll have your email, and that's the email we will communicate to. And there's a note there that says we will send you additional information on the full application. What we'll do is prior to the full application going live, we're going to email anyone who's pre-registered and say, reminder, the application window opens on July 7th or July 8th, depending on what kind of business that you are. So you will get an email from us stating that too. If you're wondering what you might be eligible for as far as a grant size, on the business.nj.gov/COVID site, we have a grant size estimator. You will take your employees, if you don't write in the name, that's fine, that's not required, but the quarterly wages are. And you can enter the quarterly wages for each and every one of your employees and then estimate grant size, and it will give you the full-time equivalent number so that you'll know that going in. It's an excellent tool. And we also have an eligibility estimator. So you'll be looking at your Q3 or Q4 2020, whichever was the most recently filed, and you'll do the same thing here. Enter quarterly wages for each of your employees, estimate your eligibility, and it's going to tell you your full-time equivalent number and what you'd be eligible for. A little foreshadowing to what's next on the application. So we've gone through roughly 13 pages, I think, of the pre-registration. The application is not that heavy. The application is fairly straightforward, and I don't want to say simple because it does require you to have information about your business, but it's fairly easy to get through, much quicker. Were you deemed an essential business? Are you a nonprofit? What capacity was your business able to reopen? What was your revenue loss due to COVID? Your additional financial need after other COVID-19 assistance. So if you're a business that received a significant amount of assistance, we want to know what's the need after you've included all of that. And then what will your grant proceeds be used for if you're approved? And those are going to be drop-down menus. A reminder that pre-registration is open through June 30th at 5 p.m. Where you'll be able to, or what day you'll be able to apply depending on your business sector, and where to find the application at the business.nj.gov/COVID site. And that takes us through to the end, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the grant program.
Thank you, Patience. All right, so with that, we can open the Q&A segment of this presentation, of this webinar. One of the questions that we received, let me just open here the chat, is someone that pre-registered for phase 4, but forgot to actually apply. Do they need to redo the pre-registration, or can they just apply?
No, that's a really good question. If you pre-registered for the phase 4 during the initial opening and you submitted that pre-registration but did not come through to the full application process, no, you do not need to come in and pre-register again. We've held on to that pre-registration for you. You can log into the application portal with your username and password, and you will see there that your application, your pre-registration is listed, and it should say pre-registration submitted. Once the application is available to you, it will say, I believe it says full application in process. You'll be able to select it.
Okay. Another question we have, what does a negative impact by COVID mean?
So negative impact by COVID, that's a good question too, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a financial impact. It could have been a staffing impact, a loss. It would be a financial impact, but it doesn't have to be based solely on dollars coming in. It could be the loss of a contract that happened. So maybe dollars that were expected to come in and didn't, that weren't there in 2019, but would have been there in 2020 had COVID not happened and you didn't need to close down or whatever the situation was. So how were you impacted? Did you have to spend more money because you were staying open, but you needed to, but you spent money on personal protective equipment, on ventilation systems, things like that. So how were your revenues and your business impacted negatively because of the pandemic as a whole, not just revenue numbers coming in? Could be loss of potential loss too.
Got it.
Opportunity lost, I think that's the way they say it.
Understood, yes. Another question. What do I do if I realize I make a mistake or if something changed with my business status between the time that I pre-registered and when it comes time to apply?
So if you're, as far as your business status, if you closed, for example, your business between when you pre-registered and when the window opens to apply, if you've shuttered your business and you're not reopening, then you shouldn't apply because you wouldn't be eligible. If you made a mistake within your pre-registration, that's not going to be able to be edited. However, if that mistake or incorrect number or whatever it might be causes a need for manual review or a decline, you're going to have the opportunity to address that either in the review or appeal process.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have 3 more questions. Can single LLC owners with no income earned in the business apply?
With no income earned?
Yes, no income earned.
So you would need to show a negative impact from the pandemic. So if you earned in 2019, but you didn't earn anything in 2020, then that would be your negative impact, sure.
Okay, got it. Another one that I've heard a lot, I'm an Uber driver. Am I eligible to apply for this program?
So you must be a registered business in the state of New Jersey. So you must be registered as a business. So that's going to depend on each individual Uber driver, but you need to have those. You need to be a registered business and registered to do business in the state of New Jersey.
I understand. And the last one I see here, can you still apply if you're currently applying for other grants or loans?
You sure can. You can certainly still apply. You're going to want to list anything that you've applied for through your pre-registration. And if you are approved and have applied for something and received it in between when you applied and we approved you, you're going to need to declare that to us because that's going to be considered in any kind of a duplication of benefits scenario. So for example, and I'll just put this out there to the group. It really it applies to the restaurant industry. But if we looked at it a little bit more broadly, between when we opened the Phase 4 grant originally and when we have this reopening, a lot of restaurants have now received restaurant relief fund dollars, and those are significant. Some of them, in the hundreds of thousands. So we need to understand, do you still have a financial need after receiving those funds? And you need to let us know if that's still there because a duplication of benefits situation could occur. Now it's a large example because those funds are so big, but if a program comes up and you apply for it, in between applying and being approved for ours, you'll see when you get the grant agreement on your approval that we're going to ask you about other funding and you're going to need to certify that you still have that financial need and that the funds won't be used in a duplication of benefits scenario. So for example, you got funding for November, December rent. You got funding and used it for November, December rent for your business. Our funding and other funding would not also be able to be attributed to that. So everything has to, one fund for one purpose.
Got it. Okay, I think that was the last question that we received today. So with that,
Roberto, I believe we have one in the Q&A section.
Okay, all right, I missed that one. My apologies. All right, I can see that. Yes. Okay. A lot of us entertainers are confused. If operating via our Social Security number as a single employee and paying taxes as determined by our 1099s from various venues, would we qualify for this program? This person is a comedian. He lost tons of gigs and opportunities, and he's being told to apply. However, he's unsure of the eligibility. He's just looking to save time and also, not clog up the application system.
Sure, totally understand that. If your business is registered, if you're Steve Smith guitar player or Steve Smith comedian and you are paid via 1099 and you get funds paid that way, but you've registered Steve Smith guitar player as a business and you're registered in the state of New Jersey, you absolutely should apply.
Got it. Okay. And now I really don't see any more questions. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar on phase 4 of the Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant Program. Again, we'd like to thank Assemblyman Vincent Mazzeo for taking time off his busy agenda to join us today. And we'll also like to thank our CEO, Tim Sullivan, and our Director of Strategic and Program Initiatives, Patient Purdy, for that wonderful presentation. Special shout out to my colleagues in the communications team who are working diligently to answer and field all questions that we received today. And just a reminder, you can visit business.nj.gov, where you can find more information about our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and detailed information about the different programs that currently available for eligible small business owners and nonprofits in New Jersey. So with that, I'd like to also remind people that this program closes in 1 week from today on June 30th. So please, if you believe that you're eligible to apply, please do so. This is much needed assistance that is available for small business owners in New Jersey. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Assemblyman Mazzeo, and everybody have a nice day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.